Hey guys, it's Bionic here. Welcome back to another Godforge video. Today I'll be breaking down each of the starter heroes kits in detail so that you can have the best start possible in the beta. The question is there a right choice? Well, it turns out there is. Usually I would say Guan Yu, but the beta is very different from the alpha and even early access, so there are many considerations to be made. Let's go through all three kits side by side so we can get a clear comparison and decide where they may shine in the beta. And of course you can pick who you want, whether it's who you think looks the coolest or the most fun. But if you like to get into the nitty-gritty of things, strap yourself in. The first thing to look at is the base stats, and the most important stat for these slaves is attack. It turns out that Lady Jacques has the highest attack, followed by Ramses, then Guan Yu. Although the difference is quite small, only about a 2% jump in between each. Otherwise the stats are not too different, with their defense stats in the reverse order of attack. All speeds are the same. Ramses just has slightly higher faith by 3 points. This won't make much difference. Now that we've considered base stats, we can compare attack multipliers. On the basics, these are pretty close. Interestingly, they're in the opposite order to the hero's base attack stat, and by about the same amount. So they all end up doing the same damage on the basic within 1%. The core abilities have the exact same pattern, therefore all doing about the same damage. Although, as a quick side note, this assumes you use all percent stat increases with armor and weapons rather than flat stats. There probably will be some flat stat gain, which will slightly favor those with the higher attack percent multipliers. Now, moving on to the ultimates, this is where things change up a bit. Ramses has a 315% AoE versus Lady Jacques' 340% AoE. With her higher base damage, this means she hits about 10% harder than Ramses. Although, the conditional speed up 2 on defeating an enemy is probably not quite as good as a 30% turn meter push sometimes, as you could already have a speed up buff on, or the battle may only last one more turn, thus not benefiting much from the speed up. Then there's Guan Yu's ultimate, which has been recently changed. It is far worse against multiple enemies now, but it's now better when facing single targets such as bosses. It does 4 times 175% damage or 700% damage to a single target, which is huge. Especially if you then add his passive's 20% increased damage to targets under drain, plus the 20% extra damage the target will take while under the effect of drain. This takes the damage to effectively over 1000% of attack per ultimate. Overall, I think this is a good change for balance. It really solidifies him as a boss killer and makes the other two starters significantly better in wave content. Especially once you consider one of the mechanics that made them so potent in the alpha, the Awakening 5 core cooldown reduction on defeating an enemy with your ultimate. Now it's much less reliable for Guan Yu to leverage this mechanic since it hits 4 random targets for 175% damage rather than all for over 300%. Secondly, this compounds with the fact that ultimates could be happening more frequently now, meaning that Ramses and Lady Jacques will be doing a lot more AoE damage than Guan Yu since they could get more ultimates than cores, which when they defeat enemies with the ultimate helps refresh the core quicker, allowing even more AoE attacks. So far it seems Lady Jacques will do maybe 5% more AoE damage than Ramses with everything considered so far. But now we can factor in the passives. Due to Acid and Drain only needing to be placed once for the full passive effect, they will increase damage a lot faster and more consistently versus Bleed, which needs 10 stacks for the 20% increased damage. Therefore, in waves or bosses where you use a core or basic before the ultimate, Ramses will do significantly more AoE damage than Lady Jacques, but overall on average probably still only a 5% advantage, and Guan Yu still remains the weakest in wave content. The next thing to consider are the effects of their debuffs. Ramses places Acid, which ticks 5% enemy max HP when they take a turn, double to shields and barrier, and it also disables armor sets. For Beta 1, the armor set disable is likely to be irrelevant due to there being no PvP. But the pro is that it only requires one attack to fully place, 5% max HP isn't that substantial in most encounters, but it's still quite helpful to have. Lady Jacques, on the other hand, uses bleeds, which requires her to take a combination of 15 basics and core attacks to achieve a full stack of 10 bleeds. This is not going to be particularly relevant in many situations, and it won't allow much use of her passive in wave content. She's likely to get only 1 or 2 bleeds on enemies each wave, which is only 1 to 2% enemy max HP damage or 2 to 4% bonus damage on follow-up attacks. Overall, much worse than Ramses outside of long boss fights. Finally, we have Guan Yu, whose debuff is Drain. Despite it not doing any damage, I value it over the bleed and acid. It's an AoE, so it will place Drain on all targets, increasing the damage they all receive from your whole team by 20%, as well as giving 20% lifesteal to your team while it's active. Then his basic attack synergizes with the Drain, dealing an additional 5% enemy max HP per basic hit. And this can be leveraged with Join Ally Attack, Join Attack Imprints, Counter Attack Imprints and Armor, Retaliate buffs, and having high speed and turn meter push. Another consideration with dot effects versus enemy max HP damage is that some bosses may be resistant to one or the other. So far we have only seen bosses resistant to damage over time effects, so bleed, acid and blaze, but not enemy max HP effects. So this again makes me favour Guan Yu's 5% enemy max HP effect. But this is beta, and Guan Yu shines mid to late game, which may not be as relevant, as progression will be much slower than the alpha and the boss HP isn't going to be in the millions straight away. Plus you are very likely to pull a Guan Yu during the beta to use by mid game. I think most people will gain more of an advantage by starting with an AoE focused starter, especially when you consider Ramses and Lady Jacques want to be Awakened 5 as soon as possible, whereas Guan Yu can function really well without it. So starting with Ramses or Lady Jacques makes sense to get you closer to those awakenings sooner. There are still a few more considerations to be made, but so far with all the prior considerations, Ramses seems to be winning as he brings the best AoE damage as well as an easy to use debuff that's good anywhere. Finally, we need to think about synergy, specifically relating to your legendary hero from the minigame if you played it. With all things considered, Lady Jacques is my least likely candidate for the beta, especially considering how much better other epics and even rare heroes are at placing bleeds. But if you're bringing a legendary hero like Dracula or Morgan Le Fay whose damage scales off bleeds, she may be the right choice for you. I think she could do with a small buff, maybe increase stacks of bleed placed from her basic from 1 to 2, and have her 2-hitter ultimate play into the boss killing realm a little bit more with a single target then all targets attack, similar to Jepé Totec, but with lower multipliers. A 275% multiplier should be pretty balanced, so that will do 550% of her attack to the initial target, then 275% attack to all others. Now, with Guan Yu, if you already have a Slayer to clear waves from the minigame such as Raijin, Cizin or Lamashtu, you could consider picking up Guan Yu instead of Ramses or Lady Jacques. Otherwise, I think the right or safest pick for most players is going to be Ramses. Not by much, but it could still be relevant. Let me know who you'll be picking as your starter for the beta and why you want to use them. I'm eager to hear all of your opinions. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit like, and I'll see you in the next one.